we'll do introductions. So welcome everybody. Thanks to Positive Life and for joining us on this hot summer day. It's a typical August day. And as you know, Nelson Vergel will be presenting, but we're pleased to have Dr. Foltz from DAP to give us a quick update on what's happening in with COVID right now. So Dr. Foltz, go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, hello. For those of you guys that don't know me, I'm Dr. Christopher Foltz. I'm an infectious disease physician at Desert AIDS Project. So I was asked to just kind of give a little update locally here about kind of the numbers we've been seeing and some of the trends we've been seeing. And most of this is California and Riverside data, but I've shared some data for unique to Desert AIDS Project and Palm Springs as well. So I'll just kind of start at the beginning here. This is straight off of the California Department of Public Health's dashboard. So, you know, this probably isn't a surprise to most people, but since about early July, we've seen a pretty steady increase across of new cases of COVID-19 in California. I do these talks about every 2 weeks. So on the side, on the right side of the slides was the last time I presented this, which was about 2 weeks ago. And then I wrote the changes of, so, you know, we're up to about 520,000 cases here in California. 2 weeks ago, that was about 356,000. So, you know, that's up almost a little over 150,000. As far as deaths, you know, we're at 9,500 in California. 2 weeks ago, we were at 7,300. It's about an increase of 2,150. And then as far as testing goes, we continue to see a trend in testing more people, which is nice. But we still are seeing, you know, quite a discrepancy in the cases, as far as still seeing a significant number of younger people. You know, over half are still about 50 years or less, which is different than what we were seeing before. Is much more kind of widespread. This is what we think is reflective of the, you know, younger people being a little bit more gung-ho to go out in public and less likely to follow the guidelines currently. And then also, you know, pretty disproportionate with Latino populations as well. And that's something we're seeing pretty consistently throughout Riverside and the Coachella Valley. Let's see here. I can get this slide to change. Let me try this. There we go. So this is Riverside's data. So just kind of more locally here, 38,642 cases. This is up about 10,000 from 2 weeks ago. Locally here, 737 deaths. We were at about 577 2 weeks ago. So an increase of about 160. One good thing is here is you can start to see kind of a trend that, you know, we peaked, it looks like, towards 2 weeks ago, and we're slowly starting to see a little bit of change. We'll see if that continues, but it has been at least leveling out, if not coming down just slightly. And then our deaths have been pretty consistent, but if anything, it hasn't, you know, we've had these large spikes and valleys, but if anything, you know, it hasn't consistently gone up. It's stayed relatively stable, which is some good news. Sorry about this. Let me go. So at DAP, for those of you that don't know, we've been essentially operating as a COVID triage clinic, but majority of what we do there is just COVID testing, whether it be symptomatic or asymptomatic. So this is kind of some of our numbers, and this is very hot off the press. This is actually data through the end of last Friday. So in total, you know, we've seen about 2,800 patients coming in for testing. This is all data grouped together. So some of these rates may seem a little high or a little bit low, I guess, but it's basically since we opened a conglomerate of those numbers. So since we've opened, you know, we've had 209 people total test positive. That's an overall rate of 7.2%. I said I've been doing these about every 2 weeks. So you can see we've had a slow increase in our overall positivity rate in that time period. The majority of what we're doing currently is swab testing or PCR, nucleic acid-based testing. We've done about 1,800 with, 147 of those being positive, about 8% total. And as you can see, that has been steadily increasing as well. We also do antibody testing. We have a rapid antibody test. Even though there's so much controversy with these antibody tests, the one thing I think we're fairly at least confident at saying with this test is if you're positive, we believe the test, meaning you were likely exposed. If it's negative, there's a higher false negative rate than we had originally thought. So can't take too much for that. But of these people that we've tested, about 94% have been positive. This rate has been relatively steady. It's slowly increasing, but we're not doing as many of the antibody tests now, given that we're seeing much higher numbers. The majority of what we're doing is swab testing. But just to give you an idea about the number of positives that we are getting each week. So since we've opened, that would be week 1 back there in mid-March, and then week 20 was just finishing out the week of July 31st. Yeah, we've had pretty, when early on, we weren't testing very many people, but, we did see a fairly big spike. This was right around mid-March, early April. Then we were steadily pretty low, had a very low number of positives. And then right around July 4th that week, shortly after, we saw a large increase in numbers and been consistently seeing those higher numbers kind of since. And just to give you an idea how many actual tests we're sending. So, early on, we weren't sending that many tests. That was due to availability of the tests, labs to do the tests, etc. Obviously, we've increased our capacity significantly, as have a lot of other sites here locally. But on average, we're doing somewhere around 100 to 150 tests, I'd say, a week. We've had a couple of weeks where we've done much higher. But what does this actually look like when you look at the rate of positivity per week? That's what this is. This reflects the positivity rate, so not the absolute number of positives, but based on the number of tests we did. And as you can see, kind of matches the previous graph, but we had a large spike, almost in 20% back, right? This was right around the July 4th time. And then since then, we've kind of been hovering right at about 8-ish, 9%, and then got down a little to 6, but in the last 2 weeks, we've seen a slight increase, went to 7.8, and then finishing out the week of last week, our rate was almost 10% at 9.5. And then I thought I'd break down some of our data about people living with HIV. So of the 2,885 people that we're seeing, 532 of them were tested. So that's about 20% of all of the people we've tested, 20% have been HIV positive. Of those, of all of the people that just were uniquely positive though, 31% were COVID positive and were people living with HIV. So that was about a rate of 15%. And then of those 31 patients who were HIV positive, we broke it down. So most of them, a big majority, and that's pretty much what you see across the board, around 90%, do fine, only have mild to moderate symptoms and do well at home. 4 of our patients did actually require hospitalization. So that's about 10%. And then we had 1 fatality so far that we know of. So right at about 3.2%. And these percentages are reflective of the 31, not of the original 209. And then I will say, just of note, the 1 fatality we had multiple risk factors, HIV just being one of them, but had multiple cardiac disease, lung disease, was over 65. So many other risk factors besides just living with HIV. And then here's another thing that I kind of just have been looking at here recently. We're getting a lot of people asking, as well as people in the community, kind of wanting to know what our asymptomatic rate is, or how often people are asymptomatic and carry COVID around. Obviously, this has implications for spread and just risk in the community. Overall, it's very, very low. And this has been reflected through a few studies that, I've read, some other studies in LA County. Especially in adults, the asymptomatic rate or carriage is much, much lower than I think people had hypothesized or thought, or at least in early, small samples of data. But just to give you guys an idea, in our data here locally of 142 people who had tested positive, there were only 5 patients who were completely asymptomatic at the time of the swab. So that was 3.5%. And of those 5, only 1 of them was completely asymptomatic without a known exposure through the whole 2-week incubation period of the disease. The other 4 patients there either developed symptoms, whether they be mild or not. So overall, we see a very low incidence of people who do the swab test that were asymptomatic. But when you look at our antibody testing, 86 people that have had positive antibodies, 7 of them were completely asymptomatic, and we didn't track down either direct confirmed exposure or any kind of symptom that may have been COVID within our testing window, which was through March 1st. But even then, that's a rate of only about 8%. All the other people who tested positive either were swab positive previously or had a COVID-like illness or flu-like illness during when COVID was spreading in the community. And then how this relates to other communities, I'm also, I still do some work in LA County, so I have some data from them. But one hospital there has been pre-screening all patients before elective procedures since this all started, since March 1st. They've done a total of 9,000 screening tests, And the prevalence there is very similar. The prevalence of an asymptomatic carrier is very, very low, less than 1%. Obviously, we know there's some fluctuations with the accuracy of some of the swab tests and such, but just to give people an overall idea that, the true asymptomatic COVID carrier, at least in an adult, is a relatively rare thing. Most people, if they need to be tested or get tested, it's because of symptoms. Very rarely do we see someone who just comes in completely asymptomatic and ends up testing positive. It's been a relatively rare thing. That actually is all my slides. I only wanted to take up a little bit of time. I don't know if there's any questions or how quickly we need to move on, but I'm happy to answer any if there are some.
Yeah, if you do have any questions, go ahead and either put them in the chat or raise your hand, and we'll take 1 or 2 minutes for quick questions for Dr. Foltz before moving on. So there is a raise your hand feature, or just type it in the chat there. I'm not seeing any. Oops, there's one. Someone's asking, is there any difference by gender?
Yeah, so that's a little difficult for us to tease out. In the county and state data, it's pretty 50-50. At DAP, it's not been 50-50, but that's mainly because the majority of our patient population is male. So we're obviously skewed from the front end. So we're seeing that consistently. So about 75% of the people who test positive are males, but we're overwhelmingly testing, a large population of males, almost 80%, I would say. So it's hard for us to go by gender just because of the patient population we usually see. But most data, other places in data, it's been, initially it was thought more male prevalent, but it's been pretty much equaled out now that males and females are equal.
Great, thank you.
I see a couple of questions. I'll just go through these real quick.
Yeah.
Can you comment on the effectiveness or not of anti-HIV drugs in preventing COVID? So this is definitely a hot topic of research, given that coronavirus is an RNA virus similar to HIV. So far, the data has not been overwhelmingly positive. There's been some small minor studies that have shown maybe some benefit, maybe not. But as of right now, we can't really say that any of the antiretrovirals for HIV have any direct or preventative action, but data is a little early still, so we won't have the final answer on that probably for a little bit longer. Will there be PCR tests available soon? So there is an antigen test that's available now that's been FDA approved that's rapid. It takes 10 to 15 minutes for turnaround. There's working on rapid tests. At DAP specifically, we're actually in negotiations to get multiple rapid antigen tests, which are FDA approved, hopefully by September. So ideally, we're trying to get them before flu season so we can do rapid testing and have rapid testing widely available. Are there statistics for DAP post-reopening or before? So pretty much, I guess with the post-reopening, so I don't know if you saw that large change in our positivity rate back around when I was quoting around July 4th. So that's pretty much when a lot of places started to relax a little bit and open up. So we've seen that big shift up into that 8 to 10% rate. And since the reopening, that's kind of consistently where we've been in, minus that, 1 week where we had almost 20%. Prior to that, we were pretty locked down, and you can see our rate was around 4%. So I think, we definitely are seeing a higher rate of infections since we've reopened, but if anything, it's stayed lower than what it was, and it has kind of stayed around 10%. So it's not continuing to rise again, but we've definitely seen an increase. With tracing, does it seem like the infections are happening where is there tracing? So we actually don't do much contact tracing. That's all done by the public health department. By their choice, we offered to help, and they have it mastered. So we let them do their job. It's hard to, I can't really comment on that. I know there was an increase in prevalence definitely in incidence in the eastern parts of the Coachella Valley. If that's still as high, I'm not as sure, but we primarily test people obviously on the west side in Palm Springs, Cathedral City, and we're still seeing those numbers. So I'm not sure about the other parts of the valley. And then, are we taking anything to prevent it? No, not currently. There are some medical people who are and who have, but we don't recommend any kind of medication for prevention, not until we have more data on it. Our best guess, or our best preventive measure is all the things we're doing, wearing masks, social distancing, and then, knock on wood, hopefully a vaccine to come. I heard someone talk about that briefly at the beginning, but best case scenario, the beginning of probably next year, we may have approval of some of these fast-tracked phase 3 vaccines that are being studied right now.
Thank you. We'll take one last question, and then we should move on.
Any trend in identification of common places of infection? I mean, I would say, when that big peak started again around July 4th, the main was younger people. We were seeing a lot of infections in people under 30. The majority, almost 90% of our infections for a 2 to 3 week period were people under the age of 30 years old. So initially we saw it in younger people. Those are probably the people who were going out, not following guidelines as much. But I think now we're starting to see the effect of them bringing it back to their friends and their family members. And we've seen a lot of family contacts from younger people who were infected around early July. So, that's it. Basically, the big common things are just being around people, close quarters, prolonged periods of times without masks. Those are your highest risks. And I think we saw that's pretty much reflective of what we've seen. Finally, is that going to be a vaccine center? Everything goes perfectly? Yes. We may hopefully if these vaccines get fast tracked, we will quickly turn our COVID clinic into a vaccine clinic. So,
which vaccine are you going for? Do you know yet?
So, I mean, if things go as fast as they would, Moderna's one would probably be the quickest, but we're also in talks for potential trial opportunities for some of these other companies like the Merck, Johnson & Johnson ones. So all very preliminary stuff. So we'll see. Probably that stuff will be months before it's come to fruition, but if we definitely can, we will. I think that's probably all the time.
Yeah, we should, if you have other questions, you'll have to submit those to Dr. Foltz offline. But just in regards to the vaccines, Moderna, they're the first one out of the gate, and they are enrolling at a place called Advanced Clinical Research up in Banning. And initially, they were not allowing people with HIV to sign up. And a bunch of us raised the stink, including Nelson. And Nelson helped get a petition out that's gotten over 1,000 signatures so far. And we just heard yesterday, I think, that that is going to be changed. So it'll take a little while they go to the Institutional Review Board and make an amendment to their protocol because it was written in there. But that will be changed, and they will allow people with HIV. And we're told that that'll be true for most of the vaccine candidates. There might be 1 or 2. So that's good news. Great. So thank you so much, Dr. Foltz. We really appreciate you taking time out from a very busy day to join us for this update. We appreciate it.
No worries. Happy to help.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Terrific. So why don't we move straight into Nelson then? He's sharing a screen. And Nelson really needs no introduction to this crowd. Just about everybody knows him, but he's a longtime advocate and a longtime friend. And we're delighted to have him back. So without further ado, Nelson, take it away.
Hey, thanks, Jeff. I love Palm Springs. You guys have always been welcoming to me. I think it's the only place in the United States where I regularly, once a year, I lecture. So I don't do these things anymore. So it was very refreshing for me to have to go through all the data from the 2 conferences we've had this year, the CROI conference and the AIDS conference, to put this together. So it's taken me a few days, but I've been seeing the data as it gets in, but I was blown away this weekend when I started working on this, how much data we've been gathering on this weight gain situation and some of the cure. So there's some exciting things. So hopefully you guys won't be too bored today. I usually have a lot to cover. You know me, guys, I like to talk. So, but I love the chat version of questioning. So you can actually start typing questions when you see something that doesn't make sense or I speak too fast. I don't have any pharmaceutical or any type of funding to do this. So nobody's telling me what to say. I usually tend to speak up my mind, and sometimes that's good, sometimes it's bad, but it really is my interpretation from the 2 conferences, and I review the data about that. So I have no conflict of interests. And this information is intended for educational purposes and does not provide direction for treatment, diagnosis, and potential outcomes. So obviously I'm just, as I said, reviewing data. And I have to thank, obviously, Jeff Taylor and Positive Life series for always being a welcoming place for me. And the clinical care options company, they do educational programs for physicians. And that's where I steal most of my slides, although they're public domain. So they've been very gracious to let me use a few of them. So this is what I'm going to speak about. First of all, a brief overview of the new HIV medications coming through. And yes, we do have a few coming through that are going to change the paradigm of HIV, in my point of view. I'm going to speak about the HIV remission eradication story, basically the tale of the two cure HIV positive people. And obviously you guys have Timothy Brown in Palm Springs. We have now somebody in London who is actually from my country, from Venezuela, who also looks like he is cured. And we have a guy in Brazil too, so I'll be reviewing those three cases. Obviously not Timothy's, because we've had 12 years of not only knowledge of his experience, but also personal knowledge, since he's a friend of most of us in this call. The life expectancy data and the comorbidity-free expectancy, which is a new term, which is very interesting. The long-acting injections for the treatment of HIV, that's almost maybe this year will be approved. It's already approved in Canada. We'll talk a little bit about the new, the first-in-class investigational treatments. This whole thing about the weight gain data in the new era of HIV, something we did not expect with new treatments. We actually thought that leaving protease inhibitors behind and all the toxic nucleoside analogs like ACT and D4T were gonna get rid of this problem, but we have a few issues with weight gain. HIV prevention, even though many of us in this call are already positive, there is very interesting data on the long-acting injection for those that cannot comply or adhere with daily Truvada, oral Truvada. And also, I didn't include it here, I have an appendix for that I will not be able to review because of time, where there's a lot of the potential treatments for weight gain that I usually speak about every time I go to Palm Springs, but there are a few things, new things that you guys are gonna see in the handout that Jeff will send you after the call. So yes, we do have a bunch of medications. Some of us have resistance to many of them by being long-term survivors exposed to all kinds of monotherapy back in the days, where we still have four classes of HIV medications. Some of them, even though it looks like we have so many, have cross-resistance. So even though we have many options, some of us may have developed resistance to a whole class. I have resistance basically to almost 4 classes. So that tells you how some long-term survivors like myself, even though we have all these options on the table, we really have run out of many options. We have 14 single tablet regimens and once-a-day regimens, and some of them have overlap, obviously, and some of them are Me Too drugs, meaning they're just companies making a copy or of another company's pseudo kind of molecule. So even though we have 14, really doesn't mean that we have 14 different options when it comes to sensitivity to the virus. We have one intravenous administration drug, Trogarzo. I take that one every 2 weeks. We have already, as I said, in Canada, they approved the long-acting integrase inhibitor plus the non-nucleoside injection. It was, the FDA sent the company back to get some more data in December. We thought we were gonna get that approved in December, but they need to dig up some more data. We never really found out what data, even though we had calls with the company. But Canada went ahead, first time probably in the history of HIV that I know that they approved something before we did. They went ahead in March and approved that double medication type of injection. We have 7, I really counted 9, because I just realized ACT and D4T were not equal. 7, 8, 9 no longer used. They're medications that have falling of grace with the guidelines and toxicities. And we have a bunch that are considered Me Too drugs, or basically they have overlap in the activity as others. This is the part of the table or graphic that Pulse Magazine produces every year to update, and they have updated with a bunch of stuff that has come through. This is an injection of an integrase inhibitor, cabotegravir and rilpivirine, which is a non-nucleoside. It really is 2 products. That's all that is needed for this product, not 3 like we usually have, and there's no nucleoside backbone. They already had a name before they got as I said, sent back for more data, Cabenuta, and that may be approved before the end of the year. We really don't know. It is a mystery, to be honest with you. These are obviously the once a day, or in this case, it will be once a month injection, but once a day tablets. These are the nucleoside analogs, and we know most of them. Some of them are new names, but really are old drugs like tenofovir and 3DC. So these guys, most of us know already. These are the non-nucleosides, and they're all new. The only one that's pseudo-new, maybe a year and a half or more, is Feltra, which is doravirine. I'm going to speak about that. I'm taking that drug. I'm pretty impressed. It's the only non-nucleoside, and Sustiva is part of that, and Verimune, that has no drug-drug interactions, no food restrictions, once a day. There are many, but and hardly any to no side effects. So it's one of those drugs that I'm getting more and more biased towards because of my own experience usually. We have not new drugs, but combinations of old drugs. This is a boosted Reatas. This one is an integrase, Islatravir, with 3TC. Also, another 2-drug regimen that doesn't require a 3rd drug, but is only used for switching people that have been on detector for a while and have no pre-existing resistance. So we're trying to see these guys, the 2-drug regimens that have no 3 drugs, like Genboya, Novio, Complera, obviously we know. Delstrigo is also kind of pseudo-new because is that non-nuke I was talking about, the doravirine, with basically with Truvada. But as I said, there is this trend now to move away from 3 drugs into 2 potent drugs. Usually it's an integrase, a non-nuke. In this case, it's an integrase and a nucleoside, a very mild nucleoside for earlier stage patients. And obviously we have the ACT, believe it or not, people are still getting prescribed ACT, even though we know the toxicities associated with it. Truvada, Viri, and Sagen, and the protease inhibitors, which are all pretty well known by us because I don't think, there's nothing new there. Calitra has kind of fallen off grace in the United States. We have more, as I said, more once a day drugs. None of these are really new. It's a boosted Duravir, but that's because it has Covistat, not Calitra, not Norvir. Trogarzo is that IV every 2 weeks. Is a monoclonal antibody that I'm using, and this drug is a newest approval of entry inhibitors. It's twice a day. It's for people with multi-drug resistance. Not very excited about the PK of their drug, but I'm not going to get into that in this discussion. And we have protease inhibitors. In this case, they're only showing 2 because they're single tablets, but we really have another one, the Gilead integrase. And these are the drugs that have fallen off grace. And Serid, for some reason, Plus I think forgot to include it here, but Serid is also in that list. So we let go of a bunch of drugs that were not absorbed very well or had a lot of side effects, had ACT, and obviously Crixidine, which caused a lot of issues for us, and Fusion, which was an injection twice a day that most of us, I took it for a while and it was not fun to definitely take it. So let's go into the kind of exciting data. Obviously, we know about Timothy, our friend Timothy. Many of us obviously become friends with him, love the guy, lives in Palm Springs with you guys. But now in 2019, it got reported that Adam Castillejo, who lives in London, a Venezuelan guy, got also cure, and I think we can use that word now after somebody has been undetectable and with no antibodies for a while. And that was exciting. Obviously, Timothy's always wanted to have company in 12 years. And he actually is being one of these things where he has actually been saddened by the fact that so many people that were exposed to his protocol died. He was just this guy that survived a really harsh protocol, while at least 8 others that were exposed to it later after him did not survive, because it's that harsh, and there was a lot of autoimmune, the body actual rejection of the stem cell transfer. So this is just a table comparing the Berlin, which is not Berlin, I would call it the Palm Springs patient, Timothy, and the London patient on what they had. Timothy had leukemia in 2006, London patient Hodgkin's lymphoma in 2012. Timothy had not only induction, but chemotherapy, a lot of treatment prior to the stem cell. He failed chemo twice. So you basically, to be considered to take the risk of a stem cell transplant, you have to fail, or the chemo has to fail you. I hate to say you have to fail. So chemo fail you at least twice in many cases for you to even be considered. He, the London patient, also had first line and salvage chemotherapies, including biologics, which Timothy didn't have access to in 2006. The stem cell donor was a perfect match in Timothy's case, with delta 232, double delta 32 mutation. In the case of the London patient, it was almost perfect, but there was 9 to 10 when it comes to the match. So it wasn't not all the way there, but almost there. Timothy had a first transplant in 2007, which was it was preceded with conditioning that included a bunch of chemo and immune suppressants. And you can tell this is a very, very complex, harsh cocktail. And in London, we basically had a simpler, not probably easy either, but fewer compounds with biologics that obviously were approved after 2006. The HIV medications were actually discontinued the day he got transplantation. Timothy did. And in this case, in London, they waited a few months post-transplantation. We don't know whether that makes a difference or not, to be honest with you. Timothy had to go through another transplant. And some people don't even know that. And he's gone through so much. 2 years later, basically, had a relapse and had to go through another transplant with obviously another conditioning pre-transplant of chemo and immune suppressants that were not included in his prior treatment. In the London case, he did not require a second transplant, so he fared a lot better. Timothy didn't really go back in treatment, or even, basically the day of transplantation, the HIV medications were discontinued. Whether or not that made a difference, we really don't know. Whether had he remained on treatment, who knows? But he didn't, and he actually became, as I said, antibody negative for HIV. After the stem cell transplant, you have to go through an immunosuppression cocktail that lasts 38 months or 3 years after through treatment. So he not only had to go through this hell, but also after a stem cell transplant, going to suppression with a cocktail. And in this case, in the London case, was a lot shorter, less than 1 year, and a lot simpler. Graft versus host disease, basically a problem that kills people, usually when your body's rejecting the stem cell transplant. He had it. He had a great one following the first transplant, and in London also in 77 days after. So this is usually the highest risk when your body starts rejecting, but doctors, oncologists know how to treat it in most cases. But as I said, many several patients after Timothy died just because of the graft versus host disease reactions. ARV-free HIV remission over 12 years, and obviously this is a new case, so 18 months, maybe 22 months by now. I don't know how old this, maybe more, but let's say he's closer, getting closer to 2 years. Okay, so let's hope that he still, there's no rebound, and that we have more and more people, and we are expecting more data from other people that have been exposed to a more simple, there's nothing simple to this protocol, but compared to Timothy's simpler approach to the stem cell before and after. And so you can get obviously a stem cell donated from somebody with a Delta 32 double mutation, or you could have it, like some companies are looking at, you can have your immune system modified through ex vivo or outside your body, or in vivo delivery. The in vivo delivery is definitely being just in the early stages of research. The ex vivo, we've had some data, although, and by the way, Jeff Taylor is the most knowledgeable about this subject because he's still active in all the committees, the cure-related committees. I'm not. But the interesting thing is that they're looking at probably developing a more scalable gene therapy for HIV positives that have failed chemotherapy with different cancers that do not require such a complex conditioning and post transplant protocols. So hopefully that will move on and look good. As I said, Jeff, I'm sure Jeff will bring somebody to update you guys on gene therapy and all the other remission type of research, and there are many, many studies going on right now. This was a little surprising. This was just reported in July at the AIDS conference, which was virtual, online, about this doctor in Brazil that I think he started years ago, 2014, 15, started trying different things on like a pilot test on different people. He chose like 5 people, 4 arms, and started doing intensification, meaning back in the days that was a hot topic. We've actually lost interest in intensification. Intensification means, we are under treatment, we are undetectable, and then they bring in 2 more drugs on top of what we're taking just to see if it can drive the DNA, the actual viral particles that we still have, multiplying even when we're under 50 copies per mil on detectable viral load, to see if we have some type of remission. And the data that we've seen in other studies wasn't really that promising, so it's kind of falling off grace. But anyways, so out of all, I think 5 times 4, that's 20. I'm sorry, 30 patients that he exposed to different protocols. 1 patient, there were actually 2 at the beginning, but 1 has remained undetectable after he stopped HIV meds for 15 months. Obviously, we don't know. He may actually rebound. The person is not negative yet to antibodies of HIV. So it's actually, he said that his antibodies are reducing. So he's not, quote, unquote, cured, but the fact that he's remained undetectable after the exposure of, he was taking ACT and a protease inhibitor, and the doctor added an integrase and Maraviroc, an entry inhibitor on top of that for 48 months. And the interesting thing, and we don't know whether this means anything, is that the doctor added B vitamin, vitamin B3, which has some pilot data, in vitro data, that seems to help as a flushing agent, as a HDAC inhibitor. I've taken that product for HDL cholesterol, and it makes me extremely hot. I get, kind of a rash. So it's not easy to take, but we'll see. We're observing this case, since it's 1 out of 30. Will he rebound? Will he not? It'll be an interesting thing to see. But there was some media exposure to the word cure every time we say, and he's without a stem cell transplant. So that made it even more interesting. And obviously, many of us read the report and we're like, oh, we'll see. Hopefully, we'll wish this patient the best. We really are rooting for him, but. The intensification data that we've had from the past wasn't convincing, and whether or not vitamin B3 can definitely do some help in their mission, that's definitely would be cool. So we don't have to go through stem cell and complex treatment. So let's see. As I said, it's one of those interesting single cases. So are we living longer? Yes, we all know we're living longer. Whether or not we're living better, that's another issue as we get older. And there's actually, this was an interesting paper presented at CROI in February this year. Well, they went through a cohort of a Kaiser Permanente of 39,000 HIV positives. It's a huge cohort that Kaiser has, and controls HIV negatives of more than 250,000. They also looked at those that started HIV treatments with CD4 counts over 500 between 2011 and 16. Most of them were middle age, 41, mostly male and white. Most were gay, men that have sex with men who initiated ART. During follow-up, 29% has T cells over 500, so only a third started treatment early enough. Those that started treatment over 500 had really the life expectancy very close to HIV negatives, just missing by 2 years. So obviously we know that the earlier you start when it comes to CD4s and immune health, the better you fare, right? However, once you do an average of everybody, the life expectancy of people living with HIV compared to HIV negatives in that time, and that's 2014, 16, where integrase were, just a new thing. I think this number may actually improve as integrase and inhibitors have come through since then. I really believe so, and that's just, I've seen some data, but I do believe that we are closer to the 65. But there's a gap here, obviously, okay? What I really like is the concept of comorbidity-free years. So this is the years that we have that are healthy enough that we don't have high blood pressure or diabetes or all cardiovascular issues or even frailty, fatigue, all the different comorbidities. Well, here we have chronic liver disease, kidney disease, lung disease, diabetes, cancer, or heart disease. When you do an average, we definitely don't fare well. And this is actually expected years remaining at age 21. This is a 21-year-old that starts treatment in this time, 2014-16, since the drugs were a little better than here, obviously, than their earlier times. And now we have even better, I think, when it comes to efficacy. But when it comes to healthy years, where we don't have a health problem, there's a huge gap right there. So basically, at this time, they were calculating 15 years. And this is mathematical modeling, by the way, which usually have holes in them. 15 years of healthy years compared to 31 years for that 21-year-old if the person is negative. Whether or not the gap is smaller, but there is a gap, and we all know it because we have enough data about aging with HIV that has really shown the gap in comorbidities that we experience with compared to HIV negatives. So, good news, and we're closing the gap in both ways. We're closing the gap on life expectancy, and hopefully we'll slowly close the gap, although I'm really not as hopeful of that when it comes to comorbidities as we age. And a lot of us are dealing with it, including myself in many ways. So this is exciting. Obviously, we've been hearing about the long-acting injection for a while, for a long while, I think. I really was surprised when They didn't get approved in December, but I think they will, and Canada jumped on it. So Canada basically March 20th approved the regimen. Is 2 different compounds, an integrase inhibitor and a non-nucleoside, and they call it Cabenuva. I think that's how you pronounce it, Cabenuva. All these names are so strange. And yes, it's once a month, but I'm going to explain that it's not as simple as one shot, and it's not as simple as just as I thought, you know, but it's a good practical way to treat HIV if you don't want to take oral medications. When it comes to people like us, many of us over 50, we're already taking meds for comorbidities every day. Whether or not this will make a difference, I really, in my point of view, this is a personal opinion, don't think so. I think the younger, the naive patients that don't have to take any pills due to comorbidities are probably going to be welcoming in this approach. And I'm actually very happy to see this. This is why it's not that simple. And this is just one part of the package insert in Canada that has just come out. I don't know if the pharmacies in Canada have it yet, but they do have the package insert. They call it something else, by the way. They have to start you on orals first for a month of the integrase separately from in a non-nucleoside once daily. And once you're on it for a month, you just see if you tolerate it well before you have the commitment to switch into an injection. You get 2 injections, big injections, 3 mils. Those are 3. That's a syringe full for those of you that inject maybe testosterone or the things that inject 3 mils. It's a big injection. And one of them is oil-based. This one is a suspension. So I'll show data. People complain about pain. It's 6 mils in the first injection. I'm still, and Jeff may know more about this, how we're going to deal with injections if people have to go to their doctor's office or even to pharmacy, but I really haven't heard the details yet since we may have different requirements here in the United States, but they're not injections that you receive at home by mail. They're not. So the patient has to be provided the injection, not self-administer. And then after you got the big shot, month 3 and afterwards, you jump into a smaller 2 shots, 2 mils instead of 3, obviously from them on. Okay, they do have a kind of a complicated protocol for those that either forget to show up for the injection, so they will have to go back to the orals for a month. So it's a little complicated for those that do not show up to the injection. For me, I think at least the doctors will know if a person is adhering, because if they don't show up, then they're not adhering. So there's a true measurement of whether or not is somebody sticking with the treatment. So I'm excited. I really think maybe younger men and women may actually prefer this. There's some data that actually shows so. And if they have enough of a butt to get this kind of volume too, some of us have lipoatrophy in the butt and don't have enough tissue there to get injected 6 mils. So real quick, it's kind of one of those clinical slides. So I'm going to go through it real quick. They just went through a study that obviously they gave people the oral medications for a month, and then they tried 2 different doses with every 8 weeks and every 4 weeks, just to see, and just to see how many people reached undetectable viral load and also side effects. And every 4 weeks had fewer failures, fewer resistance mutations. Out of 523, only 1 had resistance in the 24 months, and then 2 in 48 months, in 48 weeks. I'm sorry. So this was a chosen frequency every 4 weeks. Most people had injection site reactions. And the company said they're grade 1 and 2. We'll see when it comes out. That's when we really find out what side effects are. And the pain seems to subside after 3 days. As I said, we'll see when it comes out, but I do hope that that's true. Patients prefer the injectable over oral therapy because of obviously it's more practical for most people. And yeah, they were switched, the ones that were receiving it every 2 months. And this is a graph of the injection site reactions per week. And it seems like obviously the beginning, because you're injecting a lot higher volume people, and it's the first time you get the product, I think there's some reaction there, but it seems to stabilize around, 20 some percent of patients still have reactions after a few weeks. So that's not too bad. And they're actually, they asked the treatment satisfaction for those that were doing orals versus injectable, and it seems like most people were satisfied and they stayed on the injectable. Only 2 people withdrew because of injection site reaction issues. I will show actually after this section, I'm going to go back to this study and show, however, the weight gain that is observed with injection, which was the only thing that I was like, oh man. But we're experiencing weight gain. There's not a treatment out there that doesn't cause some kind of weight gain, not in the majority, but at least on a substantial number of people. And I'm sorry for this graphics, because a little blurry. Excuse me, I'm gonna drink something. There's basically a few products. They're still being researched, even though people may think we have enough drugs out there. There are a few of us that are looking for either more practical treatments, or a few of us, like 10% of us, that have multi-drug resistance and are still looking for better things. Flusanavir actually got approved a month ago. It's an oral twice a day maturation inhibitor. It took forever to get approved. There's some issues, but it got approved. This is the only one out of everything here that, well, cabotegravir was approved also with ropivir, but all of them basically the entry inhibitors. There's one from GSK. There's non-nukes from Gilead and also from Merck that I'm going to show. It's actually very, very interesting, long-acting. Most companies are moving towards long-acting agents since the ones that they field is a little crowded, obviously. The non-nukes, ropivir is long-acting. Is LA, by the way, is long-acting. It's almost approved too with cabotegravir long-acting. Monoclonal antibodies, right in the entry part of the life cycle. That's where Trogarzo is, the one that I'm taking every 2 weeks. That's where and Pro 140, which is a subcutaneous once a week injection that, well, Jeff and I will have a few biases. We're not going to talk about it on the call, but we still have biases about that drug. There's a new protease that does not require boosting from Gilead, a capsid inhibitor that we'll be talking about, that it may actually be good every 6 months, and another maturation inhibitor from GSK. So there's still, as you can tell, there's still a few, even though people think HIV research for new drugs is basically stopped. We're still gladly, because I do welcome more and more drugs as we find the cure. This is a nucleoside reverse transcriptase translocation inhibitor, NRTTI. It's a lot like a long-acting nucleoside without the side effects. It has a 10-fold greater potency than any other approved antiviral. This is a Merck product, and Merck, I'm liking what Merck is doing. Merck is really thinking outside the box. Merck is kind of a, in my point of view as an activist, and Jeff may agree or disagree, conservative company. I do tend to, they're very conservative, and they don't tend to boost their claims as much as others. But this drug looks good. It's potent. It has a long half-life. It can be dosed once daily, once weekly, or even less frequently than that. And they got approved their non-nuke, which I said I'm taking it. is the only non-nuke that has basically not only good activity against reverse adverse against non-nucleoside resistance. I had a lot of resistance with non-nucleoside inhibitors. Is dosed daily, has no adverse CNS effects, it has no food restrictions, no drug-drug interactions, favorable lipid profile. So it's the only really non-nuke that can do all that. Sustiva did not. Rilpivirine has drug-drug interactions. All the other ones, Intalens, all of them, and it has once a day pill. So they're looking at combining the two, Doravirine and Islatravir. So it's very promising. I think it's a low side effect combo that may actually come through quickly. Really quickly, just they try different doses and compare it to Doravirine, 3TC Variant. It's a drug, the drug combo I'm taking along with others. And most of the side effects were headaches, but were mild and transient. However, there's a CPK, and some of us are having high CPK, by the way, creatine kinase. Some of us have to be very careful. I think, especially some of us that have a lot of pain and aches, body aches, especially after we go to the gym, we don't seem to go back to baseline that quickly. We seem to get achy a lot more. And my CPK has always been really high, like 700. I think the normal should be up to 300 or so. When you work out, it goes up. But definitely in our case, many drugs are causing this, and nobody's really talking about it. And some of us are complaining about body aches, and it's usually high CPK. But anyways, they had that as a main issue, but they say it resolved in most of them when they stopped physical exertion. What does that mean? Going to the gym, I guess, which some of us have to do because of all the issues metabolically. It looks okay on glucose. It went up a little, but it looks good on cholesterol. However, weight gain of more than 5% from baseline, decent percent of patients, more, higher at the higher dose or at the lower dose, but I would say a third of patients tend to gain weight in all of them, a little bit less on the oral Doravirine, 3TC Variant, Truvada. But this happens throughout all the studies. The more effective a drug is, the more you see the weight situation showing up. I'm going to talk a little bit about the hypotheses that I keep hearing. Some of them may be abused, and some of them because nobody has really found the reason for some of this weight gain. This is that capsid inhibitor from Gilead that is looking really potent. It may actually be dosed every 6 months. It will take a while to give people orally because it's a subcutaneous injection, because it takes a while for it to reach the levels required. So they're going to have to give people orally first and then switch them to a subcutaneous injection. And I don't know what they're going to give it to, because I don't know anything that works in 24 weeks this way. We have long-acting agents, and you've seen the data already. I show you it's every 4 weeks, but we're talking about 24 weeks here. Hey, who knows? Maybe something else will come along, because this drug doesn't work by itself, obviously, like nothing else does. But it's promising that there's such a long-acting. Long-acting sometimes is good, sometimes it's bad. It's bad when it comes to side effects. If you have something in your body that's long-acting, you have side effect, you're gonna have to write it. And that's the only thing. That's why oral induction is called, happens and we're gonna see a lot of that in the future of HIV. We're starting with orals and then switching to the long-acting after we're sure that we can tolerate the drug. Okay, so subcutaneous, they didn't see huge side effects. Injection site reactions, obviously, in 80% of patients. 6 months dosing interval may be a good thing, but you may have to, as I said, be loaded up with orals first to reach that level. So now the weight gain, which probably is, I felt a little strange talking about weight gain in an era of COVID where we're kind of terrified about death again. But it is a topic that is still hot in our in our world. I mean, a lot of us have been traumatized by lipodystrophy in the past, since we are all long-term survivors, most of us. And we really don't want anything that messes up with our bodies, not because of vanity, but I'll show you data that also shows that comorbidities actually increase, and we definitely have enough to be gaining through weight gain. And we know, I mean, the weight gain, excuse me, the weight gain story, or started really early for us. We were wasting before 96. And by 96, 97, 98, we started seeing this lipodystrophy thing once the new drugs, the effective drugs were, well, back then we call them effective, were approved. And we gained weight in the visceral area, and the deep organ cavity, and behind the neck, the buffalo hump. A lot of us were on boosted protease with Norvir, and et cetera, plus ACT, D4T, and obviously Crixivan had issues with, a lot of us call it the Crixie belly, and we have fat loss under the skin, lipoatrophy related to ACT and D4T, which fell off grace. It took him a while because we knew already by 1998, 99 that SERT was causing problems, but it took the guidelines committee until 2004. Calitra and Crixivan eventually were also demoted. And drugs are demoted constantly, upgraded and demoted in the guidelines as we get more data. And we knew mitochondrial toxicity, insulin resistance were factors involved in this fat gain and even in the fat loss, and inflammatory cytokines that the immune system produces while our CD4s are going up with treatment. And they basically blamed all that on this. They said, you know, some genetic factors. I saw some studies, but they never really went into detail why some people got affected and others didn't with the same drugs. And that's a question we still have. Why somebody got the buffalo hump and others didn't, or why somebody got the belly and some people didn't. So there is definitely a genetic factor, and the way we handle, obviously, insulin resistance and our cholesterol and lipids and all that. That's what we thought, really. Nobody really found a solution. Nobody really found a true explanation. We had conference after conference. I was focused on lipodystrophy for 15 years. And I have to say, it was, as an activist, it was a very frustrating thing. But now they changed it from lipodystrophy to return to health. That's a good way to rebrand an issue. And we're seeing a lot of rebranding now politically. But return to health syndrome, because it seems like the sicker somebody was when they started treatment, they would get the more fat gain through the immune reconstitution that happens with treatment. So that was the after 2004 or 5. That's what we started hearing. So the word lipodystrophy, you don't hear it anymore. You don't see research on lipodystrophy. Research has moved on because the grants, I guess, and the grant money kind of dried up, and people moved on to bigger and better things. So lipodystrophy really was never really resolved. There was a treatment that got approved a few years ago. It's an injectable every day, Grifta, which really works after long-term, like 6 months, daily injections, expensive, subcutaneous. Now at least you can inject it once a day. It's a new formulation, SR. It's effective in maybe 60% of patients. If you really stick to it, no pun intended, for 6 months, you may lose 1 inch of your body, your waist circumference. It's the only one approved, probably the only one that will be approved, since nothing else is in the pipeline. But some people have tried it and gave it up, or insurance companies don't want to pay for it. There's a patient assistance program from the company, but hey. And we had hopes that the integrase inhibitors would not cause this issue, or at least weight gain, because they didn't have insulin resistance. The data looked clean. The data, actually, mitochondrial toxicity looked clean. I was very excited. Oh man, no cholesterol, no glucose problems. So hey, you know, we were really expecting. We don't see the disfiguring lipodystrophy, especially in younger people, but we do have it. Many of us have it because we're long-term survivors that were exposed to the Crixivan and the ACT and D4Ts, and switching to new drugs did not really reverse it, no matter what the studies were trying to do. And none of them proved that we were getting better off. Yes, switching from ACT and D4T away from them obviously improved a little bit of the lipoatrophy, the fat loss, but many of us had to get injections in the face because we looked so sick, and the buttocks and all that. You guys remember my lectures back in the days in Palm Springs. But anyways, so we're seeing now, not now, it's been maybe 2 years now, we're seeing the data coming through on weight gain, and I think it's going to become the next competition labeling field in HIV for pharmaceuticals. I have to say, if somebody jumps on this and starts showing some better data, I think they'll get ahead when it comes to marketing. I'm a marketing guy, and I do see a big opportunity here. Since now we have really effective drugs when it comes to HIV viral load, this is like an unresolved issue. So anyways, integrase inhibitors and TAF, the replacement of tenofovir. Surprisingly, we've seen weight gain with that drug. Tenofovir did not show a problem with weight gain. It showed actually a problem with bone density issues and kidney issues for some patients. I'm back on tenofovir. I never had problems because I'm taking it with doravirine. But anyways, across naive populations, substantial weight gain has been observed when they start integrase inhibitors, particularly the Gilead drug or the Beat drug, the BK, dolutegravir, with or without TAF. There's many cohorts, 22,000, almost 6,000, 1,100, 1,000 that have collected data. Excess gain, weight gain has also been evident among people breast patients that switch from, let's say, a non-nuc to an integrase inhibitor. So not only those that start from scratch with integrase, but they're switching. And a lot of people were switched. There still are. A lot of us and a lot of people not with built-up resistance that were taking protease inhibitors or non-nucleosides like Sustiva were switched, and a lot of things improved. Viral load obviously was better, cholesterol better, glucose better. Some of the side effects showed up later, like depression and anxiety in dolutegravir, but most things were better. So we really were hopeful. But a lot of people are starting to complain. I have friends of mine, my belly's bigger now on this integrase, man. I'm supposed to be better. And now we're seeing that definitely is an issue where people are gaining weight. Most women and African Americans, persons, older people tend to have more issues. I know a lot of younger people on integrase doing great, no issues when it comes to body or any of that. So this is not a discouraging thing for especially those that are afraid to start HIV medications, because it's really not the majority. But we're seeing enough data to be concerned that it is an issue that may affect comorbidities. So we have the body mass index, and this is a person, a female, 5'4", what it looks like when you go from BMI of 22, which is a thin person, 26, borderline overweight, definitely more overweight on BMI 30, BMI 35 is obese, and BMI 40, very obese. That's what BMI looks like. It's not a very predictive number, because somebody with a lot of muscle mass may have a high BMI, but so it doesn't really measure body composition. It's just body weight over surface area of your body. So it is not perfect, but it's the easiest thing to measure. And the higher the BMI, the more problems with diabetes, asthma, arthritis, blood pressure, even cancer, especially in obese patients. So BMI is not only linked to body image, body shape, but also to some comorbidities. And even life expectancy tends to decrease. This is HIV negative data, by the way. This is actually healthy white men with higher body weight or BMI. So, and as I said, this is not HIV positive data. Whether or not this graph will be even higher for HIV I wouldn't be surprised. So BMI is not only about the way you look and the way you feel and the way your clothes fit, but also it has implications when it comes to health. Um, and there's all cohorts that have compared just HIV controls, and this is years from the start of treatment. And we do see, although these patients were really on the lighter side compared to most Americans, 40% of Americans have a BMI over 30 because we're getting fatter, especially now through COVID, sitting at home. And the BMI does tend to increase in HIV positives as time goes by on treatment. It's kind of not funny, but I would have to say really ironic, I guess, an irony that back in the days we used to worry about the opposite, that our BMI was going down as we died of HIV wasting, and now this is the issue. Very few studies actually looked, or no studies, to body distribution, body weight distribution. So we don't know whether the BMI increase is mostly in the visceral cavity or all over. I've seen some data that shows everywhere. It's under the skin and in the visceral deep cavity. Seems like it's different when, depending on how heavy you are when you start treatment. Not very convincing, but for the real obese, it's not as big, but they already are beyond what the healthy body weight is. The good thing, and this is actually good news among the bad news, is that the DAD study, which is a huge cohort that has been following us for years, even HIV negatives before we even seroconverted, have seen that the BMA increases do not seem to increase the risk of cardiovascular disease, but definitely a higher risk of diabetes. So at least one thing, because the first thing we thought about is, oh man, we're gonna get more heart attacks as we can get heavier. And obviously, not everybody's getting heavier. You look around in Palm Springs, people are working out. You know, most of us are over 60s and 70s. In Palm Springs have probably the over 80 long-term survivors that are taking, you know, are in shape. And yes, we do have some lipodystrophy belly, but we work out, we eat well, and we may have other issues like blood pressure and all that. But a lot of people are taking care of themselves and really trying hard to exercise and eat well. But not everybody has a privilege of having access to a gym or even there are many people that are, because we criticize people that don't seem to be taking care of themselves, but there's a lot of barriers to access to a healthy lifestyle, from income to other issues that separate us as groups. So that's something we need to be very careful about, the fact that we can judge people with more problems than others when it comes to lifestyle.
Nelson, this
And this
is
is people starting TVK,
quarter after.
dolutegravir, the integrase from beef, and they in South Africa are naive. They all gain weight. Women gain more weight than men, 9 kilos. You know, pound is like almost two of these. So, and compared to Sustiva, the green one, obviously Sustiva gave us nightmares and depression, but as a non-nukes tend to be a little friendlier than the integrase and protease. But women, at least in South Africa, tend to increase more weight. Better hurry up. Yeah, and TAF is also showing increases in body weight when people are switched from Beria, and that was definitely not expected because that's a nucleoside. Also switching, yeah, as I said, switching from Beria to TAF in people with undetected viral load. This is the background therapies, and yeah, they even separated them by, some people may actually be taking medications that are associated with weight gain, like antipsychotics, mood stabilizers, antidepressants, blood pressure meds. A lot of blood pressure meds increase body weight and a lot of us are taking them. Corticoid steroids, anticonvulsants, antihistamines, and I guess was taking an appetite stimulant. But anyways, and they're the ones that are associated with weight loss, which is all of this from bronchodilators to some stimulants, antidepressants, antipsychotics too. So they actually separated them and look at them. Those are switched from Beria to TAF while maintaining other treatments on their background. The ones that were on integrase, they gain weight. When they switch to TAF, non-nukes, and PIs, believe it or not, we used to think that protease inhibitors were the worst when it comes to weight gain, but the integrase are making people gain more weight, and the weight gain usually happens at the beginning, 0 to 9 months. That's where most of it happens when you switch. Weight gain after switching, to the new non-nuke and taking this product, Foltz. Well, I don't think I've gained more belly, although I can't explain whether I may feel like I do because I'm not working out as much because of COVID, but at least when I switched, I think I remained the same. And this is the non-nuke by itself, Foltz, by Merck, and this is a combination with Truvada, basically, because as you know, Gilead sometimes has an issue with allowing other companies to use TAF. But hey, it may be actually a blessing for Merck because tenofovir doesn't seem to be causing this weight gain issue as much, or even an increase in cholesterol, in LDL cholesterol. TAF actually shows an increase in LDL. Another thing we didn't know 2 years ago. I took TAF for a while. My LDL was high for the first time ever. So it's back down because I switched back to TDF. Obviously, you have to keep watch of your kidney function, but some of us are lucky not to have it. So the advantages of it seems like I'm selling this drug. I don't even have a friend at Merck, but I do like the fact that it has no drug interactions. All non-nukes have no lipids, no rash, no neuropsychiatric side effects. You can take it with a empty stomach or not, unlike all the others that you have to take it with fat. Good resistance profile, but we have no studies comparing it to integrase. Obviously, there is no co-formulation with TAF because of a little Gilead issue. Large tablet size, I don't think so, but I was taking Intalens, which is even worse. And so it is a promising drug. I think we're going to see a lot more people switching from Intalens, from Endurant, from all the other non-nukes, definitely Sustiva, that have issues with interactions and all that. And when they switch, some people gain weight, but the weight was not as much as all the other products that we've seen so far. So like everything, you gain weight when you switch or when you start, but this product seems to have less weight than the others. As I said, I'm not selling this drug. I have no friends in Merck, but I'm actually kind of excited that a non-nuke is doing really well with virologic control, and it may 74% had less than 5% weight gain. So that's actually a good thing, less than 5%. So anyways, that's me trying to talk about the new non-nuke. The prevention, the PrEP boys and girls are going to soon know more about this injection of cabotegravir, the integrase inhibitor, which will be injected by itself, obviously as monotherapy. It was compared to Truvada orally. More people remain undetectable. More people remain undetectable than Truvada. Because obviously they didn't have to take it every day. Believe it or not, this is really interesting. This is the most interesting graph that I get off on data. I'm sorry, guys, I'm kind of a nerd. But they did dry blood spot samples of these patients on Truvada. They just took a little drop of blood and measured blood levels there. And they saw that only a third of them were taking it every day out of the study. Some, the purple ones, 4 to 7, so not every day. Some 2 or 4 times a week, and the rest less than 2 doses a week, and some no detectable drug at all. So they were not even complying with the study. So only a third of people in PrEP, at least in this study, were taking it every day. I don't even know if I was HIV negative, if I would take a drug every day, if I'm not having sex that frequently. So that's something else that has been discussed. the use of Truvada as needed before and after sexual encounters. But it's very interesting that I thought it would be more better adherence than this, but it's not. So the injection, the long-acting injection had some, some issues like nasal congestion, the blood sugar went up, and pyrexia. Pyrexia is this increase in body temperature. We feel a little achy, like we're coming down with something. Not a good thing to be saying right now with COVID, but the injection had that effect more than Truvada. And they say injection site reactions. And as I said, it's the same as a treatment of HIV that I showed before, but it's monotherapy. It's only using the integrase inhibitor without the non-nuke. Seems to get better as time goes by. At least that's what the company says, and we'll see whether that's true when it comes out. And this is what it was kind of shocking to me, because these are HIV negative. These are people with that HIV getting the injection, the cabotegravir injection. The blue one is cabotegravir, and the red one is oral Truvada, and this is weight gain. As obviously as weeks went by, and you see obviously the cabotegravir injection integrates by itself. There is no immune reconstitution if you don't have HIV. So this proves to me, and I'm going to say something that probably is going to get me in trouble, that there is some medication related effect on the weight gain. And it's not all about this immune reconstitution or return to health issue that is being sold to us for so many years as a way to pacify us. I'm sorry, I'm getting really political here, but I guess I am. I'm really troubled by the fact that we're still dealing with this without having anybody at least explain it. But there is. So I hope the information is packaged in such a way that doesn't really scare people to jump into something that may actually work better for them. But there is this issue with, and we're not talking about huge amounts. This is actually kilos, 5 kilos. We're 12 pounds, 10 pounds. I'm not good with my math, but yeah, after 90 or some weeks, you can see the spread. Obviously, some people are on the lower side, and some people know this is a spread. So that tells me HIV is not present in this system. So there is a class effect or a medication effect. So definitely work better, reduce the risk. And oh my God, I made it on time. So we're finding the cure for HIV has taken a long time. Some of us are frustrated. It seems like 12 years after Timothy. I really did that we're gonna have more people. It really has been kind of strange. And it's actually proven to me how strong he was to go through all this hell. This was his luck. I don't think so. It takes more than luck to survive all he's gone through. And we have somebody else hopefully to join him, and hopefully other cases that we'll probably hear about, because we already know that some researchers have been doing stem cell transplants like the London patient in at least 5 more patients. The long-acting treatments are becoming more popular, and they will be the next thing sooner now than before. PrEP has been an amazing thing. I think it's reduced HIV infection rates everywhere. I think, in my point of view, personally, I think PrEP has reduced HIV stigma. For those of us that are sexually active, some of us are not getting rejected as much due to the fear of infection. That, and obviously U equals U, undetectable equals we don't infect people when you're undetectable. Those two things have been potent at halting a lot of the spread of HIV in the United States. But taking a pill every day is challenging for a lot of people, like you saw, and hopefully this long-acting injection will help there. The disfiguring lipodystrophy is not as common, especially with new people coming through the treatment, as it was back in our horrible days of the toxic treatments. But weight gain is definitely showing up in every study, no matter what product you use. Whether or not it will change our quality of life, whether or not it can be reversed. We have not a single study on interventions for this issue. All we have is the same old review of data, cohorts, and so tired of it. Oh yeah, we have this. This is happening more. This is happening more. I want to see. Okay, this group was exposed to exercise. I have a few options on the appendix, because obviously it would have taken me another hour, and maybe Jeff can have me back soon to cover the many many different options that I think should be looked at for metformin is one of them. I do believe some people may do well on metformin for weight loss. There's new data coming through combining it with an amino acid, and actually with very tiny doses of Viagra, believe it or not. These three things combined seem to do a very good job to reduce weight, and compounding pharmacies, some of them I'm working with. I work a lot with compounding, are making this product. We call it Synergy, Metformin Synergy. I'm not selling anything here, by the way, but a study popped up, and I have the freedom, thank God, with the work I do, to have people compound things that I look at in papers that are available. Obviously, these are drugs that are all generic and available. We do add a little B12 there because metformin decreases. But I like to see HIV doctors prescribing this to see whether or not we can reduce some of this weight gain. Obviously, there are medications for weight loss, and some of them have side effects, but there are bunches that were not rejected by the FDA. Most of them, maybe as many as here, were rejected due to heart disease issues. Dosing, I have some dosing here. What you have to go through to get a prescription, because not everybody can get one. And the side effects, usually blood pressure can go up, palpitation, constipation. You're getting your thyroid checked, because that's another thing that has not been looked at in HIV, whether or not we have thyroid dysfunction or low thyroid. And that can actually help us, not help us, make us gain weight. Low testosterone can also make you gain weight. And obviously that has been addressed a lot in HIV, thank God. A lot of doctors are testing for low testosterone in men and women. Frailty, when I have more time, we'll talk about frailty and HIV, and how some of us, as we get older, we become frail faster than HIV negatives. Old data shows that a 65-year-old HIV negative has similar frailty as a 55-year-old HIV person. But obviously, as I said, we need more data on that. But I have my own opinions about what to do about frailty, exercise, obviously high protein. If we have sleep apnea, we tend to become more frail. Creatine is a supplement that has strong data in many ways. Some doctors freak out with creatine because it may increase creatinine, and they think it's a kidney dysfunction, but it's not. The use of testosterone, nandrolone, oxandrolone, they're anabolic steroids that I could talk about for a while. Glutathione, even B12 once you have low B12. So anyways, anabolics, and I'll be sending a handout with all these slides. So thank you so much. And maybe we have a few minutes or not of questions, Jeff. Let me get out of this sharing.
Yeah, no, we're right on
Okay.
time. So if people want to,
I think you're on mute.
Can you hear me?
Let me see. I don't hear
Can
you.
people hear me? I show myself unmuted. You can. Okay, I see some.
You are on low volume. You should increase your volume.
Okay, I think it's.
There you go. Talk now.
Yeah, go ahead and type in some questions.
Let me see.
30-some people, so it's easier to type them than in the chat box there.
I can't hear, man. I'm sorry. You guys hear? Anybody else? Can you write on the chat? I don't hear Jeff.
I'm hearing them pretty good.
Oh well. Let me see. Is it me? Let me see. Hold on. Okay. Maybe because I had my volume down. Can anybody talk now? Jeff?
Yes.
Okay, good.
If they raise their hand and unmute themselves.
Okay, there are questions here already. Can I answer some of them?
Please.
Okay, sorry, what's my end? Any new treatments? No. For lipodystrophy? No. Answer, yeah. 15. Viagra. Yeah, Viagra with metformin and leucine. Okay, all right. Any more recent data on Serostim? No, Serostim was the most effective treatment for lipodystrophy, for lipohypertrophy, for the belly. More effective than Egrifta, but some people had high blood sugar and a lot of body aches, so the FDA rejected it for lipodystrophy. So that never got approved. Only is approved for HIV wasting. Some doctors managed to write a script and justify it, but not approved for lipodystrophy. Any more questions in the chat, or even, I mean, we can open it up for, if you guys, everybody's on mute.
Yeah, if you want to raise your hand, I can unmute you. There should be a button to do so. It's different places depending on if you're on your computer or.
Yeah, we have 30 people on the call. No more? Any questions? No? Should I just go to bed? It's 2 hours later here. Okay.
Terrific. Well, thank you, everybody, and thank you, Nelson, for this. And I'll be sending out his a PDF of his slides with the appendix that he was talking about, so everybody has a copy. I see a couple more messages coming in. Let me see.
Hope I didn't depress you guys. So it's not as upbeat as usually the data I present, but it is what it is, right? Not like we do need some cheering up.
And then a couple of announcements. So we continue to do these programs through the summer. Often we take a hiatus in July and August because people go away, but nobody's going anywhere. So we'll continue next month. And also the reunion project that we were supposed to have back in April has been rescheduled for October 17th. It's going to be all virtual. We had hoped to do kind of a hybrid in-person virtual event, but that's not going to be possible the way things are going. So you'll be getting more information. So that'll be a Zoom meeting like this with some breakout sessions. So we're going to try to, utilize all the features of Zoom to recreate what the reunion project is each year. The keynote speaker will be Javier Munoz, who some of you may recognize from the cast of Hamilton. He took over for Lin-Manuel Miranda on Broadway and played that for many years. As he's an HIV-positive gay man, also a cancer survivor, who's going to talk about his experiences as a long-term survivor. So we're looking forward to that. So great. If you have any questions, shoot me an email, and we will see everyone next month. And we'll get Nelson back sometime next year so he can cover all those slides he couldn't before.
Stay safe and healthy, everybody. Stay safe and healthy. Talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye, Jeff.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Take care.